Just 2 weeks before their trials, 4 of the Marcy prison guards taking plea deals. They will now spend years behind bars for their role.
Robert Brooks, 43 years old, an inmate at Marcy Correctional. He was just being transferred from Mohawk Correctional to Marcy. He didn't make it in the door without being beaten. He was murdered on the morning of December 10th, 2024. Folks, this is an outrage.
Just like that, 8 defendants, now down to 4 defendants taking.
Nicholas Anzalone pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter. The plea deal will have him serve 22 years in prison and 5 years of post-release supervision. He also waived his right to an appeal. Had he not accepted the deal, he would have gone to trial for second-degree murder. He will remain out of jail until his sentencing on November 21st. Anthony Farinaa also pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter. He will serve 22 years in prison and 5 years of post-release supervision per the plea deal accepted. He also waived his right to an appeal. He would have also gone to trial for second-degree murder. He will remain out of jail until his sentencing on November 21st. After taking time away from the bench to speak to his attorney, David Walters also accepted his plea deal. He pled guilty to second-degree manslaughter and will serve 2 1/3 to 7 years in prison. He was initially facing 5 to 15 years for the same charge. He also does not have to waive his right to an appeal. His sentencing will also be on November 21st. And the 4th former CO to accept their plea deal today was Michael Mashaw. He pled guilty to second-degree manslaughter and will serve 3 to 9 years in prison. He was initially facing 5 to 15 years for the same charge. He also does not have to waive his right to an appeal. His sentencing will also be on November 21st. And now to those going to trial, David Kingsley rejected his plea deal and will take his case to a jury. He was offered a deal of pleading guilty to manslaughter, where he would serve 22 years in prison. Now Kingsley will go to trial for second-degree murder, which comes with a mandatory life sentence. The defense says they do not intend to call any witnesses. Jury selection will begin on October 6th. Former CO Michael Fisher also rejected his plea deal. He was offered a deal of pleading guilty to second-degree manslaughter, where he would have served 2 1/3 to 7 years in prison. And now Fisher will go to trial for first-degree manslaughter and faces 5 to 15 years in prison. His attorney called for Fisher's case to be tried separately from the other COs. The judge will hear arguments on that next week on October 1st. Matthew Galliher was the 3rd CO to reject his plea deal. He was offered a deal of pleading guilty to gang assault, where he would serve 10 years in prison. He will now go to trial for second-degree murder, which comes with a mandatory life sentence. His attorney filed a number of motions, including one that would prevent the prosecution from, quote, narrating over the body camera footage to be shown at trial. The judge will hear arguments on these motions next week on October 1st. And the 4th CO to reject his plea deal was Nicholas Kieffer. He was offered a deal of pleading guilty to second-degree gang assault, where he would have served 9 years in prison. He will now go to trial for second-degree murder and faces a mandatory sentence of life in prison. His attorney said they do not intend to call an expert witness. Jury selection for that trial will start on October 6th.
No one's ever accused me of making generous offers. These people that pled today, this was a somber day. Those people's lives are over. I don't care if they were on the 2 1/3 to 7 range or the 22 range. Their lives are never going to be the same, justifiably so.
A lot of people, again, I have friends from the corrections field. They may or may not agree with what I'm saying. Is the act that was performed, the murder, the beating of Robert Brooks was on video. We've never seen that in New York State. I've never seen it from a correctional facility in New York State. It was shocking. It's not their first rodeo. That's not their first beating that these guys have given. I've talked to some people who know these guys. I've kept their names private because they reached out to me, and I know a bit about some of the backgrounds of some of these murderers, and they deserve to be locked up. And that's what I will leave you guys all with. And I'm going to keep screaming it from the rooftops. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I have my opinion, in my opinion, I think resonates and rings with the majority. If you can look at this and say anything but this was murder and that these guys deserve to be in jail, they should be in Marcy Correctional in general population, as far as I'm concerned. They don't deserve to be in protective custody. They should have to fend for themselves, just the way Robert Brooks had to fend for himself with being handcuffed and shackled.
Hey y'all, Kristen here. After finishing the video on the plea deals, 2 of the defendants, Galliher and Fisher, had motion hearings. Here are a few snippets from court this week.
The duty or the failure to intervene is the crime.
Right.
That's not true with Mr. Galliher. It's an element of his depravity, as the indictment reads, that they did nothing to restrain each other, did not get medical assistance, and let the beating continue.
And Mr. Galliher had a duty to intervene, and that his failure to act on that duty to intervene results in criminal liability on his part, and my argument doesn't change whatsoever.
This is from count 1. In addition to the beatings, defendants with depraved indifference did nothing to restrain each other, did nothing to stop the beatings, and failed to immediately order medical assistance for Mr. Brooks. That's not the indictment, that's an element of the indictment.
The defendant's motion to outright preclude testimony regarding the video evidence is denied. However, that is with the expectation that the people will avoid improper narration testimony. The court will address objections as may be appropriate depending on the witness, the questions posed, and the testimony. The defendant's motion to preclude evidence of the defendant's duties is denied. The defendant's motion to preclude evidence of co-defendant's statements that implicate Bruton in any way is denied at this time, but with leave to renew should the people fail to abide by their assurance.
Issue of the duty to intervene because Mr. Fisher is in the unique position that he is in. Both the charging theory is particularly novel for him as it applies to him, this omission-based theory of prosecution. So I want to make sure that the record is clear that we join Mr. Louis-Brandt's arguments. He has been taking a laboring oar on that argument, but we join everything that he said. And the fact that Mr. Fisher is going to be broken out and treated differently in front of the jury.
First and foremost, I do want to clarify. The discussion that Mr. Eisman and I had over email referred only to the bill of particulars. It had nothing to do with the indictment whatsoever. So the continued allegation that we were conceding that the indictment itself could only be read as an accomplice liability theory is frankly disproven by Mr. Eisman's own exhibit. But that's really aside the issue. In this case, our theory of the case has been incredibly consistent from the moment Mr. Fisher was indicted. He is charged for failing to act under a duty of care.
And as the defendant's motion to strike the People's Amendment Bill of Particulars, you have a right to amend. That motion is denied. As the defendant's motion to dismiss count 5 as against defendant Fisher, that motion is likewise denied. I will reserve decision as to the defendant's remaining motions until we get closer to trial time. January 12th, 9:30 a.m.
Is despicable on so many levels. I don't know how to express to you any other way than to tell you guys that this is deplorable. This is, I mean, it's a travesty of justice. You think about it. Put your shoe in the foot of Robert Brooks and his family. How could his family be feeling right now? How could the people who have suffered losses in the past feel good about this? Prayers for the family of Robert Brooks and all victims of crime, of murder, and their families. I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love from Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. Take care.